Hello, my name is Greg Dixon from Storyvan TV, and here today we have Sara McDermott Jane joining us. And Sara is a scriptwriter, and maybe you can introduce yourself here. And
Absolutely. Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on, Greg, because this is so much fun. So as you mentioned, I am a scriptwriter. So I've been a working screenwriter now for about probably 15 years. So to give you some background on me, I originally went to graduate school for publishing. And then while I was there, I wound up taking a course in screenwriting. So that was not my focus, but it was something that I tried out. And then what wound up happening is the script I wrote in that class went on to win an award. And then I wound up actually selling that script from that class. So I definitely got bitten by the screenwriting bug at that point. And then, within a few years' time, I wound up just totally transitioning away from the publishing and just into screenwriting full time. And I currently, in addition to working as a screenwriter, I'm also a screenwriting professor at 2 different universities. So I love screenwriting. I will sometimes sell original work. I also get hired by production companies to clean up scripts. So scripts that are going into production, but that need a little bit of work before they're ready. They might bring someone like me in as like a script fixer to get it in shape. Or sometimes I'm even hired by producers who have an idea and they need to hire someone like me to take their idea and turn it into a screenplay because that's not their skill set. They're a producer. They might have a great idea. So that's another area, where I come in handy. So for me, I think because I also have the publishing background, I also really love authors. So recently, within the past year, I created the book to script course, which is specifically on doing adaptations, because doing adaptations, it's still screenwriting, but there's a lot of special considerations that come into play when it's an adaptation from other material. Most often a book, although it's not always a book, it might be somebody's true life story. Like perhaps you have a true life story that you think would make a great movie. I've even been hired to adapt things like songs, like a collection of songs, and turn that into a screenplay. So there's all sorts of different things that you can actually do an adaptation with. But like I said, it can be very different than it is just to do a screenplay from scratch, where you get to create it from day one to be a screenplay. You're taking something else that wasn't originally a screenplay and you're having to adapt it over. So there's lots of specific things to think about when that's the case. And I love working with authors. So it's been really, really fun for me to be able to offer that and coach people through that adaptation process.
that's fabulous. So what has been your most fun project to date, do you think?
Oh my goodness. That's difficult. I've had so many very different ones. So I will say that I work primarily in the thriller and horror genres. And thank you, Bonnie. I see the note. I work primarily in horror and thriller, which can, as you might suspect, be very, very fun to even like be on those sets and with the special effects and things like that. I've also had some experience doing an animated film, which was also really fun because you got to see the animations that they were putting together to like create this world that you were writing about. So it's been kind of a very broad range of experience, but each one with its own particular things that were really special about it.
No, that's great. And I think you mentioned that everyone's a bit of a different adventure because the book is quite unique.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I understand you're working on publishing your own book. I think I can bring that up here.
I am. Yeah. So for the first time, like I said, I've been a working screenwriter for 15 years, but for the first time, I actually have a novel that's coming out this year as well. So this is aiming for end of October. It's called Wolves at Night. So this has been fun for me to kind of do the other side instead of coaching people getting their books into screenplays, to actually do a book myself this time around. And like you said, I think every story is its own unique adventure, which is why I think I enjoy this work so much, because every single project you take on is so special. It is its own thing. So it's always like a fresh start with like a new world, kind of any project you're working on. So Wolves at Night for me was an amazing experience writing the book. And of course, I do plan, once it's published and released, in the following year, to start thinking about doing the adaptation. So it's going to be very interesting process for me. I've adapted other people's books. I've adapted work by other people over the years, but this will be the first time, adapting one of my own. So that's going to be fun.
So for a writer out here has one or more books, or they're working on a book, how do they get started to make that into a script?
So I think the first thing I would recommend is to really try to nail down what are the key beats of screenplay structure. So not to overcomplicate, but screenplays tend to follow very strict rules just about how they're structured, usually 3-act structure, but they can follow other structures as well. And when you're in a book, you kind of have the freedom that you can break away from that a little bit more, because you have the luxury that you can explain more to your audience. You can put them in the character's head. You kind of bring them along with you so that they can totally follow what's going on. When it's a screenplay and they really need to have like the visuals, and really they're just going off visuals, dialogue, action, they have to be able to put this story together and follow it. If you deviate too much from screenplay structure, chances are they're going to be lost. So one of the most important things I would think for any writer doing a book, no matter the size of your book, would be to start thinking, okay, here's sort of those key beats of the screenplay structure, and what parts of my book actually match that. And it might mean moving things around a little bit. It might mean leaving some things out, which is always really difficult. And I can talk in a minute about why a lot of things do often have to get cut out in the adaptation process, because I think that's the hardest thing for writers. But once you're able to match those beats and you have it very clear in your mind, it's going to be so easy to write this script. You'll be like, okay, I know it's this, and this. It's proven, since thousands of years ago, this is the storytelling way. And it's just going to be very easy for you to kind of put that together and know that it's going to be successful from a storytelling point of view.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, Moby Dick had a few things that had to be taken out before you could put it on the screen. Else it would be a year long.
So. I mean, that's exactly why. So a lot of people, if you've never tried to write a screenplay before, you don't know this, but it's a hard and fast rule that they should not be over 120 pages.
Yeah.
So, the rule of thumb is that about 1 page equals about 1 minute of screen time. So 120 pages, that's about a 2-hour movie. And I mean, if you're James Cameron or someone, you might be able to get away with making a 3-hour movie, but for the average screenwriter, or especially for screenwriters just starting out, you won't be able to get away with that. So if it's over that 120 pages, and even the 120 pages is going to be considered a little long. But if it's over that, nobody's going to consider it. So you have to, if you have a book that's, 200 to 500 pages on average, it's literally impossible to fit all that into 120 pages, especially because a lot of that 120 pages is going to be dialogue. So that's another huge challenge for writers. It's very hard, I know, to cut your darlings
Yeah.
and leave out things that you like. But it's so important just to get to the essence of the story, and you can still maintain the essence without keeping in, every single scene or detail.
Yeah. I read a review of Godfather 3, and the reviewer said it was 2 of the worst movies he'd ever seen because it was too long to be just one.
I like that. That's a good quote to like sum it up for.
Yeah, sum it up. So you do more than in your coaching program and with your clients. You do more than just get them to write the script. You also take them through the process a little further too. So how does that work?
So for the book to script course, I've begun adding a couple other courses as well that focus more specifically on, marketing your screenplay and making a deal. At the end of the book to script course, you'll have gone through everything, to write the script. So that'll be in progress. And the last module focuses on the marketing part. So how you connect with producers and make deals. So I think that this is a very mysterious industry, and probably purposely so, because it's very competitive, and the mystery of it keeps, a certain percentage of people out. But it doesn't really need to be. So I try to kind of demystify it a bit in my class, and I also do live calls with my students. So I try to really demystify it a bit. Because, there's a lot of things that people say, like that you can't get a deal unless you know somebody, or, nobody looks at unsolicited material. And those things just aren't true. So, if you're a very top studio executive, you might not look at something unsolicited, but there's seriously tens of thousands of indie producers who do look at things that are unsolicited. You just have to know where to find them, where to get the contact information. So that's something that I cover so that people know how to do that. I also try to connect my students, live with guests that I have come in. So, once you're in the course, we do these twice monthly live calls, and I invite guest speakers into the live calls, including producers who will review, what's called a query letter from a student, basically pitching their idea in a letter. I've had a manager on. So most recently, just last month, I had a guest speaker manager who actually wound up signing one of the students, who now has, an executive producer attached to her project. So, can't guarantee those results all the time, of course, but I really do try to, again, just demystify it and have guests come in that can give students really straightforward point of view. This is how it is actually working in this industry, and so that the students can start to build connections and have a sense of how things really work.
Yeah, and I think it's a certain amount of certainly if you're trying to get an article published or photo or things, you have to be persistent, and you can't just send out one query and then wait for the phone to ring, because it may never ring, right? So you have to go out. I is there a role for an agent in this, or is it better for people to learn how to do it themselves and learn how to create the query letters and do all of the work themselves?
So agents, really, I don't even recommend reaching out to until you're much, much further along in your career. So this is another kind of misconception where people think like, I need an agent. The first thing you're actually going to want is a manager before an agent. So a lot of people use those terms interchangeably as well, and they don't totally realize what one does and what the other does. The agent really only comes in at the end, like if you're going to make a big deal, like if you're really making a deal with some money on the table, the agent will come in to kind of negotiate those numbers. But it's really a manager that earlier on in a screenwriting career, that's really what you want, because their job is much more about, nurturing a new writer's career and, nurturing their voice, helping them develop that voice, like what they want to be known for. So it's a lot more hand holding with a manager. So a lot of people think, oh, I need to get an agent, but it's actually the manager first who's going to help develop the career. And when you get to the stage where you're about to make a deal, that is a deal where there's like real money involved, it's usually the manager that actually connects you with an agent. So very, very rarely will a writer reach out to an agent directly and get an agent. It's almost always, that they've had this manager first, and the manager actually connects them with the agent. All that being said, depending on what kind of project you have, if it's a very low budget project, it's not going to take a ton of money to get the deal done. Chances are you might even be able to just go ahead and make those kind of deals yourself. Again, if you know kind of who to contact and where to find their contact information, you yourself can reach out directly to producers. So you would be writing the query letter on your own. Even if you have a manager, you're going to be writing the query letter, and then they might give you advice or some feedback on the query letter. But you're going to be writing it yourself. And again, if it's a lower budget project, you'll be able to reach out to those people directly without having that go between.
Yeah, I think it applies like in the music industry and also probably book publishing. To a certain degree, you have to go through the learning steps yourself before you can bring somebody on to help, because you have to, if you don't understand what the people do, then you can't choose the right ones. So, and I think in the music industry, a lot of the studios, like the days of signing bands for multi-million-dollar things is long gone, and they kind of want you to do your little indie projects first, and build up a following before they even look at it. So in many ways, you have to kind of do your own legwork. I suspect it's somewhat like what you're doing too.
I think it's very similar, yeah, because they want to see that, you're going to be a client who's going to be putting yourself out there and, making the effort and like you said, kind of doing those first couple things yourself, or even if it's just you have one project, but you're trying to market it yourself first, you're going to learn a lot about the industry. And down the line, if you sign with a manager, or if you even just make a deal with a producer, they want to have a sense that you just understand how the industry works. So what I tell my students a lot is that, like when you're having those kind of meetings, like if you get to the stage where you have those meetings, they might be asking you, certain kinds of questions, and it might seem very conversational, but a lot of it might actually be designed just to figure out like, okay, do you have an understanding of just the industry and how it works? Like, do you actually belong there? And that doesn't mean you have to know every single detail about every single thing. But you're going to give them more confidence in you if when you get to that point where you're having those meetings, you can talk about things in general about the industry and know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
So you have a course, and I'm going to put this on the screen here, and I hope you'll obscure me. That's perfect. And do you want to walk through a bit what you offer in your course?
Sure. So the book to script course, it's 8 modules. So when someone signs up, the first one's unlocked, and then one unlocks every week, basically. So there is a 30-day back, money guarantee if you needed a refund. So you get to try out those first couple of weeks. But it's 8 modules total over 8 weeks, and it covers, everything. It's going to give you a bit of an overview about the industry and the history of it. So why things, work the way they do in screenplays, how to do proper formatting, of course, how to do the structure that I talked about. And then there's also a whole section specifically on adaptations. So, when I put this course together, I had noticed that there were a lot of screenwriting courses out there, but very, very few that specifically focused on adaptations. Like a lot of them are just general screenwriting courses. And like I said before, if you're doing an adaptation, whether it's, a life story, your story, songs, a book, most typically it's a book. There's certain things that you need to take into account. So I wasn't really seeing any other courses go through that, or at least not go through it, in the kind of depth that I wanted to go through it. So this is going to cover that as well. How to really design your characters, because there's an absolute science to designing your characters a certain way so that they can interact a certain way, so that you can have amazing dialogue. And then, of course, at the end, it also covers the marketing. So it gives you the basics on the marketing and making those initial connections. Another thing that comes along with this course is that you get access to my Apex membership, which does the twice monthly calls. So that's 2 times a month we get on a call. Sometimes it's just me, and sometimes I give presentations on certain topics in the industry. A lot of times I just do Q&A with students, so I can answer any questions about either the craft or about the industry and making deals. And then also, as I mentioned, very often, at least once a month, I try to have on a guest speaker. So the guest speaker could, have any kind of role within this industry. We have producers on, managers. I did have an actor come on to talk about, playing a role, reading a script from the actor's point of view. So we have all different people come on, just so you can learn more and more. And again, I think that's really an important part, because sort of through osmosis, you start to pick up the way people talk and the key terms that people are going to use, which again, if you ever get those meetings down the line, you're going to be able to speak that same language and understand what people are talking about. The course also comes with like a workbook that you can follow along with as you work through all the videos, all the modules, which is really, really helpful. And then for anyone who feels like they need it, there is a one-on-one coaching upgrade as well, where we can just work together. We get 8 one-hour sessions, just one-on-one together to help you, get your script in shape. So that's, an optional add-on, but the course itself is something that you can just move through at your own pace, on your own.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I put the link in the chat below, and also we had it scrolling on the screen a few minutes ago. So that's fabulous. And I don't know if you said, is it? Do you have a start time, or can you jump in at any time?
You can jump in at any time, actually. So yeah, the way it's built, whenever you sign up, you get that first module, and then it'll just be every 7 days that you're in there, you'll get another module released. And as I think I mentioned, there's like a 30-day money back guarantee. So if you try it those first couple weeks and you're like, oh, this is not for me,
Yeah, yeah.
you can always get the refund. But if you love it, then hopefully you'll go through all 8 modules. And I've definitely had students. I had one student in particular who she went through and she's like, this is all I want to do anymore. She's like, she had been writing books up to that point, and now she's like, I just want to keep writing screenplays. She's just going to kind of go through it again and again and do screenplay after screenplay because she just really found something that she loved. And for every writer, one thing I'll mention too is the skills of screenwriting really are, transferable to other types of writing. So even when I was writing my own book, I really relied heavily on, okay, I know how this is how the screenplay would be structured. I know how to design my characters. I know how to do all these different things. So it was really, really useful for that type of writing as well, even a different type of writing.
No, I think it's a very useful skill for almost anything. I'm just going to put up your page here a little bit because you've got a little video here where you explain much of what you've said now. Yeah, and then you have some people who love you. So,
I have wonderful students who are just the best. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is great. Oh yeah, that's a pretty good outline of your modules there. That's good. So people can learn.
The breakdown. There's a couple bonuses there too, which I forgot to mention, but they unlock as well as you work through the course. So if you're thinking of doing a stage play instead of a screenplay, there's one bonus where I talk about that. There's a bonus where I talk about different kinds of structure. And then there's also a bonus where I talk about documentary. So if you think you have a book that would maybe lend itself a little better to documentary, then that can also be helpful. And those are just we have some testimonials from different producers I've worked with. And the one at the very bottom, though, is my student who recently got signed by the manager and now, has made a deal coming through the course. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. And you also work with individual clients too.
I do, yeah. So I do one-on-one coaching. So my slots are usually pretty limited. I can only, just because of time constraints, I can only really take like 2 to 3 people on at a time. But there is, if you sign up for the course, there's the optional coaching upgrade, which some people, really like having that just because then we can talk, one-on-one. And we can go at your own pace. Like usually I would say schedule 1 call a week, but sometimes people want a little more time between calls so that they can get more writing done. And it's fine with me. I'm always very flexible about, whenever you want to schedule your calls. But then we get to talk one-on-one about the screenplay itself and getting it in the best shape. And then of course your strategy for taking it out into the world.
No, that's absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for joining us today. And this is great. I know I already sent notices out to some of my friends who are interested, have written books or have in the screenwriting business, and they could always learn more. And yeah, so anyway, well, thank you very much. I'm going to play this little video again, and we'll chat a bit after. Okay.
This was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.